Hatchet, Chapter 18, Part 1. Brian worked around the tail of the plane 2 more times, pulling himself along on the stabilizer in the elevator, but there simply wasn't a way in. Stupid, he thought. I was stupid to think I could just come out here and get inside the plane. Nothing is that easy. Not out here, not in this place. Nothing is easy. He slammed his fist against the body of the plane, and to his complete surprise, the aluminum covering gave easily under his blow. He hit it again, and once more it bent and gave, and he found that even when he didn't strike it, but just pushed it, it still moved. It was really, he thought, very thin aluminum skin over a kind of skeleton, and if it gave that easily, he might be able to force his way through. The hatchet. He might be able to cut or hack with the hatchet. He reached to his belt and pulled the hatchet out, picked a place where the aluminum gave to his push, and took an experimental swing at it. The hatchet cut through the aluminum as if it were soft cheese. He couldn't believe it. 3 more hacks, and he had a triangular hole the size of his hand, and he could see 4 cables that he guessed were the control cables, going back to the tail, and he hit the skin of the plane with a frenzied series of hacks to make a still larger opening, and he was bending a piece of aluminum away from 2 aluminum braces of some kind when he dropped the hatchet. It went straight down past his legs. He felt it bump his foot and then go down into the water, and for a second he couldn't understand that he had done it. For all this time, all the living and fighting, the hatchet had been everything. He had always worn it. Without the hatchet he had nothing. No fire, no tools, no weapons. He was nothing. The hatchet had been him, and he had dropped it. Ah! He yelled it, choked on it, a snarled cry of rage at his own carelessness. The hole in the plane was still too small to use for anything, and now he didn't have a tool. That was the kind of thing I would have done before, he said to the lake, to the sky, to the trees. When I came here, I would have done that. Not now, not now. Yet he had, and he hung on the raft for a moment and felt sorry for himself, for his own stupidity. But as before, the self-pity didn't help, and he knew that he had only one course of action. He had to get the hatchet back. He had to dive and get it back. But how deep was it? In the deep end of the gym pool at the school, he had no trouble getting to the bottom, and that was, he was pretty sure, about 11 feet. Here it was impossible to know the exact depth. The front end of the plane, anchored by the weight in the engine, was obviously on the bottom, but it came back up at an angle so the water wasn't as deep as the plane was long. He pulled himself out of the water so his chest could expand, took 2 deep breaths, and swiveled and dove, pulling his arms and kicking off the raft bottom with his feet. His first thrust took him down a good 8 feet, but the visibility was only 5 feet beyond that, and he could not see the bottom yet. He clawed down 6 or 7 feet, the pressure pushing in his ears until he held his nose and popped them, and just as he ran out of breath and headed back up, he thought he saw the bottom, still 4 feet below his dive. He exploded out of the surface, bumping his head on the side of the elevator when he came up, and took air like a whale, pushing the stale air out until he wheezed, taking new in. He would have to get deeper yet, and still have time to search while he was down there. Stupid, he thought once more, cursing himself, just dumb. He pulled air again and again, pushing his chest out until he could not possibly get any more capacity, then took 1 more deep lungful, wheeled, and dove again. This time he made an arrow out of his arms and used his legs to push off the bottom of the raft. All he had in his legs to spring, snap, and propel him down. As soon as he felt himself slowing a bit, he started raking back with his arms at his sides like paddles, and thrusting with his legs like a frog, and this time he was so successful that he ran his face into the bottom mud. He shook his head to clear his eyes and looked around him. The plane disappeared out and down in front of him. He thought he could see the windows, and that made him think again of the pilot sitting inside, and he forced his thoughts from it. But he could see no hatchet. bad air triggers were starting to go off in his brain, and he knew he was limited to seconds now, but he held for a moment and tried moving out a bit. And just as he ran out of air, knew that he was going to have to blow soon, he saw the handle sticking out of the mud. He made one grab, missed, reached again and felt his finger close on the rubber. He clutched it and in one motion slammed his feet down into the mud and powered himself up. But now his lungs were ready to explode, and he had flashes of color in his brain, explosions of color, and he would have to take a pull of water, take it into his lungs, and just as he opened his mouth to take it in, to pull in all the water in the lake, his head blew out of the surface and into the light. It was as if a balloon had exploded. Old air blew out of his nose and mouth, and he pulled new in again and again. He reached for the side of the raft and hung there just breathing until he could think once more, the hatchet clutched and shining in his right hand. All right, the plane. Still the plane.